Hey everyone, welcome back to my show. I'm your host, Francois Forster, and I'll guide you and I'll guide us on this journey. It's so great. Last week we had our first episode. This is episode number 2. We are so excited to actually have a second episode. This week our guest is Juan Badenhorst. Now, Juan is an estate agent at the very esteemed Engel & Volkers, Potchefstroom. You all know that Engel & Volkers is an international estate agency organization. And this week we are going to take a deep delve into all things property, estate agent, buying, selling, investing of property, and how the inner workings of an estate agent work, his mind, his life, his thoughts, and it's going to be an interesting ride. Just a little bit about Juan. Now, this is quite interesting. He's still young and he has accomplished quite a lot. And for the years 2020 and 2021, he had the 8th most units sold, but wait for it, internationally. And that's in the Engel & Volkers system, in Engel & Volkers. And then the first most units sold nationally in South Africa, and also the second most exclusive mandates. Now, John and I, we've been working together quite a lot over the past year or so, and why I have him on the podcast is just the thing that he's not only a typical estate agent, as you would maybe think of an estate agent, but he's also a keen investor in property. He invests in property himself, and he has a brilliant business mind and how he thinks about investment in property. And that's what we're going to get into today. So help me welcome to the show, Juan. Juan, great to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Francois. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So let's get into it. We've chatted quite a bit coming up to today, and where I would like to start, just to put us in a place in time, it's the 2nd of June, 2023 in South Africa. It's quite cold here in Potch, and this week we actually had another interest rate increase. We're currently standing at the prime lending rate of 11.75%, and people's hairs are starting to raise. What's going on in the finances? What's going on in the property market? If you've got your feet on the ground, you're there every day, you work with buyers, sellers, with property. What's your current experience of what's going on with the finances, property, interest rates?
Yeah, so due to COVID, we had quite a interest rate drop, and that made it easier for people to enter the property market because it made borrowing money cheaper. And now with it coming back up again, it's making borrowing money more expensive. And we are entering a new cycle. Usually in the property market, you've got two main markets. You've got a buyer market or you've got a seller's market. And how I like to think of it these days is a couple of years back, 2 years back, when you have a 10,000 Rand a month that you can spend on your property, on living expenses, you were able then to service a bond of 1.25 million. And now, 2 years on, that same 10,000 Rand a month can only service a bond of 930,000. So it's quite a big drop. And that is putting pressure on property prices. And it's making it more expensive for people to live, to have a nice property, and to buy, you buy a bit less than you could a couple of years back.
But the issue would probably still be that, I mean, we all are consumers of one form or another. So you still want that property. Obviously, you think 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you could have bought that property. And in your mind, you still want to buy that property. Is that what you're seeing? Is that do people want to extend themselves too far financially and put themselves in trouble?
Yeah, I think what we saw a couple of years back, we saw a lot of new people, first home buyers. I think we did a survey in our office, and I think it was just less than 50% of all our purchases were people buying their house for the first time, which is quite good because you're getting new blood into the property market. And what was happening is people, because of the lower interest rate, people were able to service a bond for the same amount that they were renting. So they say, okay, why am I paying somebody else's bond if I can buy the property, get my feet wet, get invested, and then still have the month-to-month expenditure that stays the same, but now I'm actually owning rather than renting. So that was the main force with the sales volumes we were seeing. But some people did extend a bit. You get that in everywhere in all of the sectors where people purchase, and some people were more conservative because they knew that it wasn't going to stay this way. But we did get a lot of new blood into the property market, which is good. And yeah.
You mentioned the other day when we prepared for today's conversation that you, for the first time in years, you were contacted by a bank regarding a distressed, or it's called a distressed sale. So what is that exactly? What brings a situation like that across your table?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors to it. Sometimes it's family bound. You have problems within the family, and sometimes it's like the case we see here now is the increase in interest rate. If you bought a property a couple of years back, let's say for around 3 million, you were having a bond of around, let's say, 25,000 rand. It depends on the interest rate you got. But now that same property, that same loan amount, not loan amount, your payment amount is 10,000 rand more. And it's not, sometimes you don't get a pay raise like that. So yeah, it is putting pressure on the people who bought. But yeah, so you need to consider it. Think long term and think to yourself, if the interest rate goes up, will you be able to service your bond? And if it comes down, I will always suggest put in a bit extra. Get that thing paid off as quickly as possible. Don't go the whole length because then you pay all the interest on the property. The quicker you pay down, the less you pay to the bank and the more goes to the principal.
Now that's great points there, and I think we'll delve into that a little bit deeper when we get to the investment chunk of the conversation. You mentioned just now that regarding a buyer's market or seller's market. What does that exactly mean? When would it be a buyer's market or when would it be a seller's market in your mind?
Okay, so it is driven by supply and demand, and there's a lot of factors in the economy that mixes up the supply and demand. So with the interest rate decrease, we saw more demand, more people trying to move from the rental market into ownership. So that increased the demand. And the rate with which the demand would increase, the supply didn't increase that quickly as well. So now you've got more people looking to buy than there are properties on the market, which then causes the prices to go up. So I always tell people, because a lot of people get this wrong, they don't know what is the factors of a buyer's market and what's the factors of a seller's market. What I say is you ask yourself, who is in the power position? Is it the seller? Because then it's a seller's market. So what I mean by that, you've got 5 buyers and 1 property. So the seller can choose the best offer. So then it's a seller's market. And then on a buyer's market, you've got 5 properties and 1 buyer. So he can put his offer in, and because he likes all of the property, doesn't care which one he gets, but he wants the best price. So if he goes to the first property, makes an offer, and the guy says no, he says it's fine, there's another one. I could put my offer in the next one. So then the buyer's got he's on the how can I say?
He's got the upper hand.
He's got the upper hand. Yeah, he's in the driver's seat. There we go. Yeah. So then it's a buyer's market. Yeah.
Currently, where we find ourselves, I mean, the interest rates have gone up quite a lot. And is there how would you think about a person being in this current situation, being a buyer or a seller or an investor or a developer? How does that impact them? I think yesterday or the day before, a lady asked in my TikTok comments, okay, and I assume now she's having problems with her bond. So, okay, should I sell my property now?
Yeah.
but there's so much going on, and it's not an easy question to really answer. But what are your thoughts regarding buyers, sellers, investors at this current stage?
Yeah. So I always tell my clients, don't try to time the market. If you're not in the property industry, you make money in another industry, don't try to time it, because you're not in control of it. Control what you can control, and what you can control is yourself. Are you in a good position to purchase a property? And if you're in a good position to purchase a property, then the timing is right. If you're not in a good position, then it's the wrong timing for you. So let me make an example. In the early 2000s, you were able to buy a property in Potchefstroom for, let's say, 300,000, maybe even less. And now you are ready, but you feel the market timing isn't right for you. Now, let's say you wait a year, 2 years, because property cycles are slow moving. And just to get the property on a 10% discount, so that's 30,000 Rand less. But your plan is to keep the property, it's your primary residence, you're planning to keep the property for 10, 20 years. Now that 30,000 Rand over 20 years, when the property is worth 1.5, is not much. So you wasted 2 years living in your new properties, paying off your bond to save 30,000 Rand. On the bigger picture, it's not much. So if you are ready, and you're not a property expert, control yourself, and if you're ready, purchase the property, because you're playing the long game. It doesn't matter if a 30,000 Rand over 1.5 million is not much. But if on the other side of the coin, if the market is ready for a good purchase, but you're not ready, you're going to have the same problem. In the short term, the house is not going to be a blessing, because you're going to struggle because you were not ready. If you want to play the speculation game, then just get a good agent in your corner and you'll be fine.
Okay, I'm going to play a little bit devil's advocate, and I would think some of our viewers or listeners might be thinking now, okay, you're saying when you are ready, or whether you are ready as a buyer or as a purchaser. What does ready mean? How can you be ready? Yeah.
So when you are comfortable that you've got your expenses covered, and maybe a bit extra, because a lot of people, they don't not assume, but they're not ready for the maintenance on the property. They look at the sums and they say, okay, I've got this amount to spend on the property, and that's what I got. And then something happens, like an interest rate increase, and now the finances are tight. So financially, you should be able to have a little money left over. And I feel personally, if you've got some extra money that you can put into the bond to get it down quicker, to get it paid off quicker, I feel then you are a bit more ready. Or then if you want to buy for a bit cheaper, then to get the property settled easily in your month-to-month financing, then that will be a better choice. But yeah, people overextend themselves on a big purchase, and sometimes they buy a property faster than they buy shoes, because they get the house fever. Yes. And I think it's a big purchase. Take time, make sure you and your family are going to be comfortable, and then you make the switch from tenant to owner.
Yeah, I think it's a great point that you touch on there. Obviously, you work with people, and on a Sunday afternoon, you walk with, the couple, they just had their Sunday afternoon lunch, got an ice cream somewhere, and okay, we're going to look at houses now. Yeah. How big is the house fever reality? Is it, because last week in the conversation with Jonathan Baron as well, we talk a lot about property being an investment and property being a massive financial outlay. Yeah. And I feel sometimes we put more effort and thought in how we choose our next cell phone than if and when and which property we should buy. We walk into a property with your wife, she's like, yeah, I love this place, it's amazing. Yeah. And then you, at a whim, basically, if we can get a bond, let's buy it. And is that what you see? Is that the reality?
Yeah. I think there's pressure on younger people to get into the property market. I feel there's a time to rent and there's a time to buy. You rent until you are ready to buy. And then that means having your finances in check, making sure the property that you purchase is going to be a blessing. Because if you overextend, it's going to put a lot of pressure on you financially, and financial pressure flows out into all the other factors or all the other what do you call that, subjects of your life. Yeah. So it puts pressure on the whole family. So house fever, it's a real thing, because a couple is young, they just got married, they're ready to start a family, and now the idea out there in the world is, okay, if you're already you're going to start a family, now's the time to buy a property. And in my personal experience, that's not the case. It's a financial decision that affects your family, but get that right, and it's going to be a blessing for your family, and play the long game. Play the long game. If you, like I said, a 30,000 Rand or 10% today on a property price over 10 or 20 years, it's not that much. So rather wait, make sure you're ready, and then move from the tenant market on into property ownership.
I agree with you totally. I think we grow up in South Africa, and there's this pressure on you that, I mean, this is basically the route you have to follow. Whether it's finish school, hopefully study, get married, buy a property, get kids. It's just how it is. There's nobody's...
That's the format.
That's the format, And nobody is putting a second thought into, well, is it sometimes maybe better to rent than to buy? There's some people thinking about that, and I love to read up on them, especially Ramit Sethi and James Alturshow, that says, listen, and that is exactly the point you touched on as well, is especially with your primary residence, you have to live there for more than 10 years. You have to equate for maintenance, etc., etc., etc. And if you can't, well, then maybe it makes sense to rather rent than buy. But we'll get into that. I think that's once again gonna come in when we speak about investment in property. I would like now just to take a small step back and just to maybe get a little bit a deeper glimpse of you as a person and you as an agent. How did you get here? How did you get into the estate agent business? How did you choose? Did you choose it? Did it choose you? How your origin story?
Yeah, how did I get into being an agent? So I was always intrigued into the property investment side, and I read up a lot about it, and the social media page I follow was about investment in property. And on my wife's side, she's got family who works in the property industry, and so you would have a chat with them, and afterwards I will chat with my wife and tell her, I think I would like to give that a try. But I never got around to do it until what happened is my wife wanted to make a career change, and going through the possibilities in the Potchefstroom market, she had an interview with Engen & Volkers. And after the interview, she called me and said, Juan, you talked about it. I think now's the time. Give it a go. And I first said, no, I'll talk to my parents. We were still young. We were still dating then. I called up my mother and my father and said, okay, I'm thinking about this. What's your thoughts on it? And they immediately said, no. You can't move from a salary-based to a commission-based job, not in this financial climate, not in this political unrest we are seeing. And me being a 94 baby, I told him, Mom and Dad, since I can remember, there's never been political ease in our country. It's always been problems. There's always a reason to move out of the country. You see a lot of people immigrating. So that's not really a reason for me not to try it. So I told them, I'm going to give this a go. Thank you. I've got some good education, so I will be able to find something else if this doesn't work out for me. But my wife says, then girlfriend, she says, I think you're going to enjoy it. And actually, a year or two earlier, I had my CV and I was walking to another agency in Potch. And I got up to the door thinking about speaking to the manager and giving them my CV, and I actually didn't do it. I turned around to walk away. So this time with her force telling me, Juan, go for it, because she spoke to the manager, I think, in the Volker, and she thought, yes, I'm going to fit into this. So she got me into it after me just talking about it. And thank God for that decision.
That's also, it's great. And I think I'm always also in a position where I think my wife just always knows better.
Yeah.
If I can just listen to her from the start, they always get us into good things. So that's awesome. But you two work together now. Was she also there from the beginning with you?
No, not from the beginning. So when you start as an agent, you don't earn money in the beginning. A couple of months you need to find your feet, you need to make a sale. After the sale is done, it takes about 3 to 4 months before you earn anything. So no, she was actually in my first couple of months as an agent, she was the breadwinner. So she was looking after us. And then, well, I started as she wanted to make the career change. She wasn't too happy with the job she was in, and as soon as she saw this is working out for me, I'm making sales, she dumped the job and came to work with me a bit earlier than we anticipated or planned to do it. And there was a couple of months there in the beginning after she moved to come and work for me that there was financial but struggling. But that if you just take that year, I think it was about 8 months since she started, and then 8 months after we bought our first property. So that's how quickly we were able to change it. Then my director, Karel Venter, he told me, let her come and work for you, because 1 + 1 = 3 in this industry. And he was right. It was a great move, bringing her on board.
That's great. The first few months of being an estate agent, your first sale, how was it? Was it a great sale? What did you do with your first commission check, or would you just buy? As you said, I mean, it was tough. It just went into groceries and things like that. If you can just maybe, how was your first few months? You gave us an indication now that it's not always as good as everyone thinks it is before you got your first mandate, or what? Give us a little recap on that. Just a quick shout out to our sponsors. Without our sponsors, it will not be possible for us to do what we do. And we appreciate you so much. Thank you for being part of our journey, being part of this podcast, and have a look at them, support them, like them, follow them, show your support.
Yeah, Fransjo, so my first sale was a student apartment in the complex called Upper Liffey. So when you start as an agent in Engela Volkers, you do get good training. They take you through the process, teach you what you need to know. But I think like learning to fly, a flight simulator only brings you that far. It's not like the real thing. You need to get out there, get your hands dirty. And when I took the clients to the property to view, I found out that it was their first purchase as well. So you now had an agent doing his first sale with clients buying their first property. So they were asking me questions, they were bombarding him, and I was just trying to think on my feet, answering the questions as truthful as possible. But I remember telling them a lot, I'm not sure, but I'll go make sure and I'll come back to you. So at least our company, we've got a good support system in place. So there was always somebody, a colleague or a back office a person I can call, ask the question, and they will assist me. And we got the deal through. I didn't earn much. I think what I got out from my first sale was 2,500 Rand. But man, it was a big 2.5, because I didn't earn money for 4 months. And it was my first time earning money in this new job, new industry. And I was like, man, I could maybe do this. Let's get a couple of small ones under the belt, and then start moving up in the ladder. And yeah, so that's how I sold my first student apartment in Potch.
That's awesome. And just maybe want to shift gears a little bit now to your life as an estate agent. Let's talk maybe about a few challenges first. I think you mentioned now you were a first-time agent and there were first-time buyers. What if you take your job as an estate agent? What's the most challenging part of it for you?
So depends on what time in your career the problems shift. So the first couple of months, I think cash flow is tough. Because like I said, let's say you start as an agent. If you're a quick starter, maybe you sell your first property in month number 1. That means maybe you get paid 4 months in from starting. So you need to keep the, how they say, the pot cooking. Die pot kooks Afrikaans. And that's tough. And then later on, when you get real into the business, I think managing client's expectation gets tough. That sometimes gets tough for me. You get a seller, and each seller feels, and it's rightfully so, that his house is his castle, and he would like to sell this to somebody else, and this is how much he feels he must be able to get for it. So managing a seller's expectation or a buyer's expectation, this is how much he can afford. And he wants the most out of it, which makes sense. He wants the best brick for his buck. And so managing expectations can be quite tough sometimes. And another thing that really sucks for me, sometimes when there's a tenant involved, and I'm especially talking about the tenants, they are always welcoming into the property. It's always neat. They actually help you sell the property, and there's nothing in them for them. And then they know as soon as the property is sold, they've been living there for years, and the property is sold, they could maybe get noticed if the buyer is not an investment buyer. That sucks for me sometimes, because they feel like it's their home, and it's been their home for a couple of years maybe. And then you show up, the owner asks you to sell the property, and you need to get the job done. And then usually I always try with I don't do rentals, but we've got a good rental department. So early on when I start working with those clients in that property, I already get a rental agent on board. So because I want the whole transition to be as smooth for all the role players as it can be.
And I think that's something people forget often, is that, for one person to move, there's a lot of moving parts. He's moving into a property where someone is most probably living. So that person has to move somewhere else. That property is maybe occupied by someone. So there's lots of moving parts that people don't always think about.
I did a sale once in my early days. I think it was in my first year, and that's the first time it actually hit me that my sale was part of an 8 transaction train, if you can call it. I think mine was number 4. My buyer came from out of town, moving to Potch. This seller was moving to another, I think, Cape Town. And then I heard, so the guarantees came from way back. And then it was my properties, my transactions time to register, and then it went on again. Then I thought, okay, this is actually a big chain reaction. If somewhere you need to someone to be the first property buyer, then doesn't need to sell another property, or he's buying another property. Someone needs to start that off, because you can't have subjects to all the way through.
and that's, I love that example, because I see oftentimes people think that the property industry is simple, or just should be a piece of paper that's okay. Here's the paper, here's the keys to the house. Everything is hunky-dory. It's yours now. But it's part of such a bigger system and so many moving parts.
And adding to that, earlier you asked what is sometimes tough about my industry. That can be tough, because now you're handling your transaction to the best of your ability, but you are working with other people, sometimes in other markets, in other towns, and they need to get their job done for you in order to get your job done. So that sometimes gets tough when it's such a long transaction. You need to work with people you haven't worked with to keep your client happy, and it's out of your control.
It's out of your control. Another thing you mentioned the other day was, as a challenge for you, is buyer's remorse. And you used a specific example of a couple using their pension money. How's it to deal with things like that?
Yeah. You see, I think if you do a quick Google search, top 10 products people buy that have high buyer's remorse, property is one of them. There's a lot of reasons for that. So let's say, I always tell myself, let's say 50% of all the people who buy property have buyer's remorse, then I just need to have less, then I'm doing a good job. But it's tough working with that, because you as an agent try to advise your clients to the best of your ability. If they listen to you or not, that's up to them. And you can't control all of it. The best you can do is advise and doing the job as far as they allow you to do it sometimes. Because some people see us agents as trying to get the better of them, or not. I think sometimes they see us, we don't have as much integrity as other fields, and which is for me not the case. I want to build a brand, I want to build good relationships, and Potch is only this big if you're going to meet that client somewhere in town. And you want to ask them, hey, how is it going? Are you enjoying your property? If they're not from Potch, how is the town? Are you enjoying Potchefstroom as a town? So yeah, you want to do the best that you can for them, and hopefully that ends up being a long-term blessing for the whole family.
Now, I think we're in different professions, but we fall under the same generalization that all attorneys are prokureurs, or all estate agents are trying to do you in, or whatever the case might be. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But I mean, that's such a big part of this conversation is, and I find that in all of my dealings, I mean, I am a transfer attorney. I do property transfers. I work with financial advisors, with auditors. And the reality is, it doesn't matter in which profession you are. Not all people are created equal. There's better auditors than others. There's better financial advisors than others. You have to find the ones that work for you. And coming from that, and you said now your first sale was a 2,500 Rand commission, and you went for months without actually earning anything. And I can speak to that as well, where last year I started my own firm. And I mean, if you do property transfers, you would know. I mean, you get the transaction, it takes about 3 or 4 months, and then you only have the registration, and that's where you get your first money, and having a wife and kids and things like that. There's this, if I have a look at my TikTok channel and the comments, and that's part of the generalization we're talking about. Everybody thinks estate agents are making a killing, and they are basically doing everyone in. It's just, they just want money, and they getting all the money and just making it wherever you go. Is that the truth? Is it as lucrative as people think it is? What's your experience regarding that?
So, any sales job can be very lucrative, but it's up to you as the person in the job to do as well as you can. But coming into the industry, I realized a couple of years in that you get a 20-80% rule. You see that as well. I think if you do your research, you'll find that 20% of the agencies in Potch maybe to 80% of the business. And within the agency as well, you see some agents doing great and some agents not doing so great. So it's up to you as a person. And I think there's also a misconception when we work on percentages and we work with big numbers. A property is, in most cases, the most expensive thing that a person buys is their property. And if you work on, let's say, on a 5% plus VAT on a property worth R1 million, you think, yo, this agent is taking 50,000 Rand and putting it in his pocket, and that's not the case. There's a lot of splits that happened after the commission is earned, the lawyer pays it to the agency, that in the end, the agent doesn't get all of that money. So that perspective of, the agent is taking that whole percentage and pocketing it, that's not the case.
And people might ask now, okay, but why then are you only getting a cut? But I mean, it makes sense for me in the sense that obviously when you want to sell a property, then you want a agency that is vested and invested and has a great marketing platform, because at the end of the day, that obviously assists the seller and the buyer to either sell a property, buy their property. Is that how and why the organization works, to be this marketing platform, have lots of purchasers, have lots of sellers available for people to make these sales possible?
Yeah, volumes are important, because the more volumes you do, the more relationships you build. And the better you build those relationships, the more referrals you're going to get. And you're going to have a much stronger brand in the area you're operating. So, we need to do the splits. It's important because your agency assists you, the agent, a lot with the marketing. And the more money that is spent on the marketing, the more clients you're going to attract. And if you come to me and let's say you want to sell a property worth R1 million, and I've got a good marketing platform, then chances are your buyer is waiting for you. We were just waiting for the house, and your buyer is already on my database, and we can do the matching quite quickly.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, it's a business just like any other business. I mean, if I, for instance, buy an Avo at Woolies, it's not as if that person takes that $20 and put it in his pocket. There's expenses, there's splits, there's at the end of the day, okay, this much goes to the owner or whoever the case might be. I think it's people maybe, it gets difficult when you work with a person and you see the amount of money. And you might think, okay, but that goes to him. But at the end of the day, it's a business. You are a business, there's expenses. And these days, you see more and more often all these heavy professional videos being made, and those things cost money.
So if I can give you an idea, there are 3 people who need to get paid out of that commission. There are four people who need to get paid. The government gets paid twice. And then there's the head office. So in our case, we pay a royalty to them. Actually, first VAT goes off, that goes to the government. The royalty gets paid to the head office. Then the agency gets paid. And with the money that's left, you pay income tax, so you get taxed again. And when the one's left, the agent gets what's left, So that's the 4 parties that needs to, that gets a cut in each commission.
That's definitely so, and it's always interesting that the government gets paid twice. I should have asked Jonathan last week regarding that, why that's the case. But it is the case. A typical week for an estate agent. Once again, I think there's so many generalizations regarding the life of an estate agent, and it's glamorous, and especially now these days. I mean, you see all these Instagram videos, and it's just living the high life. And is it so? What do you do in a typical week? I mean, I love on a Sunday afternoon, it's usually nap time, but then estate agents, then you actually function. That's when you work.
So we work when everybody stops working there. So don't get into the industry if you're not willing to work 7 days a week. That's a good start, because what people see on TV and on social media is the glamorous part of it. The real grind work goes on behind the scenes. And I always tell the agents in our agency, focus on what other people hate doing, then you'll be successful. So what other people hate doing is cold calling. That's very important. We do a lot of that. I do that, each day. I will call somebody that's never heard of me. If we've got a good brand, at least at Engelen Volker. So when I say I'm Juan from Engelen Volker, they know the brand, but they don't know me. That's a big part of our business.
Okay, but cold calling, who are you cold calling?
Okay, so in our industry, the person who controls the stock controls the market. So focusing on finding sellers, that's very important. That's a big part of my day, each day. I say if you're a business owner, each day you wake up unemployed. You need to go find work to do. You need to go find business. And that's the same with an agent. You need to find something to sell. If you've got something to sell, the buyers will find you. You must just market it. So a lot of my time goes into, if there's a new property on the market, finding where it is and finding out who's the owner and contacting that person, or doing marketing or cold calling or door knocking to find somebody who is now ready to sell or could become ready a couple of months or years from now. I think when I just started my first weekend, there's an area in Potchefstroom called Bailey Park. I took my flyers, the company printed me some flyers, I took my flyers and I started door knocking. That was my whole weekend. And I knocked on this lady's door, and 2 years after that door knock, I sold the property. Yes. So I did keep in touch with her, but she wasn't ready then. But with building a good relationship with her, I was able to. That door knocking wasn't done for free. I actually got a good listing from it. Yeah.
The cold calling is very interesting for me, because I find that younger people at this stage, they are, I don't want to say scared, but scared of telephone calls. People don't make telephone calls anymore. Text, so they rather text or WhatsApp or they let's call it rather averse to telephone calls. And if cold calling is such a big part, and I think that's once again what you just said, that do what other people hate doing. If you are the one that's willing to make those calls, willing to go door knocking, you're most probably going to be more successful than the next guy.
Yeah, the chances of you finding a property first is bigger, and that's what you like to do as an agent. You want to be able to get the first meeting, and then if you know what you're doing, you're going to build trust in that person, and that's very important. Your client needs to trust you, and you need to trust yourself and your ability to do the job for the client. So finding sellers is a big part of what we do, of what I do day in and day out. And if I don't find enough, then my business is not going to grow as fast as I want it to grow. And then another big thing that people don't see is there's a lot of admin that goes with selling property, of being an agent. And the Poppy Act gave us more admin to do, and it keeps on changing. I spoke to my granddad a couple of years back, and he said when he was young, we did business with a handshake, and each time someone breaks faith, then we got a contract, and now the contract is getting bigger and bigger and bigger as like people find loopholes in it. So there's a lot of admin that goes into the being an agent. At least I've got a wife who handles that for me. So yeah, people don't see that. People don't see the late nights. Maybe if they see how late I send out my emails, they can say, "Oh, is this guy still working?" But yeah, people don't see it, and that's not what we show on the internet. They want to see the beautiful properties. They want to see the glamorous work, but it's not. it's not nice to see a video of somebody doing admin.
No, and I mean that is absolutely the truth, and that's where your world and my world collides. Is okay. Here's the papers, and then I take over from there. The contract and things like that. And if that's not done properly, then we've got issues, and we'll delve into that. I mean, why we do this is to give information to people. We see there's a need. We see people, they don't have the correct information, or they get, or just they don't have any information whatsoever. And I would like now to, let's just talk about the average person out there, the average buyer, the average seller, the couple. Let's take a young couple. They're married. They are going to buy their first primary residence now, or maybe they've just bought it and they want to, okay, I want to delve a little bit into, let's buy a flat to rent out, or something like that. And just ideas and advice. And in our earlier conversation, you said that you recently went through this whole process from a seller's side with your grandmother, and assisting her to sell her property in another town, and how to find an estate agent. So if there's a buyer, or let's maybe start with a seller. If there's a seller out there, and they're thinking, okay, I need to sell my property now, whatever the case might be, or the reason for that be, where do they start? How do they find an estate agent? And should they first find an agent? So should they first find an agency? How do they go through that whole process? This episode is sponsored by Juan Badenhorst of Engel & Volkers, Potchefstroom. If you are looking for professionalized real estate assistance, Juan is the agent to call. He is a hands-on agent specializing within the residential and investment markets, as well as new developments. For him, it is about the client, you, to present them with opportunity and to help them mitigate risk, is why he works in the industry.
Yeah, so not too long ago, I had to assist my grandmother to sell one of her properties in a different town. So I had the opportunity to see how can I find an agent in a market I don't know, with agents and agencies I don't know, to get the property sold for the best price possible. So as a seller, you should ask yourself, which agent or agency will get your property the most exposure possible? So here's how I went about things. I drove out to the property to have a look at it, get a feel for what is it we're going to sell. And then I started by driving around in the area. What I was doing, I was looking to see what agency or agent has good visibility in that area. So then I made a couple of notes on them. Then I came back to Potch, and I went on the internet. I started looking at which agency had the most listings. So I like to explain it, each listing you have is a hook in the water, and with that hook you can get a fish. So you can get a buyer, you can attract a client who wants to buy with each listing you've got. And the more listings you have, the more hooks you've got, the more clients you can attract towards your properties you are marketing. So then I filtered a lot of agencies out, and I got 3 agencies who I felt, okay, they had the biggest market share. But now you've got an agency with 20 agents. Which agent do you choose? So what I did then, I had an idea, an assumption, a calculated assumption of how much we will be able to fetch for this property. So I went onto the internet, onto their website on the internet, and had a look at which agent in those 3 agencies I chose had the most listings in that price range for that sort of property. Because if you want to sell a property worth R1 million and you've got an agent who's got 10 properties worth R1 million, and an agent with 2 properties selling for R1 million, the agent with 10 listings for $1 million is going to attract more R1 million buyers. So that was my way of thinking. And I filtered an agent out of each agency. So now I had 3 candidates. What I did then is I emailed all 3 of them. 2 of them came back to me within a day. So then I threw one out again.
So the other one,
yeah, he was too late. The first 2 that came back,
choice.
yeah, I'm not sure if he ever came back to me. Maybe a couple of days after. I don't think my wife actually answered or told me about it. But yeah, I know about 2. They responded within a day. Then I called them. So one of them called me. I called the other one. Then I had a chat with the person to get a feel of her. It was 2 ladies, to get a feel of them and to see if this is a person I can work with. That's very important. I think you need to do business with people you like doing business with. After that, now I know, okay, they've got a lot of listings in that price range. They work with strong agent. They've got a strong agency that's doing a lot of marketing in that area. So they are attracting buyers. Then I went into social media to see who is this person, what do they do for their clients, and yeah, would I like working with them? I gave both of them the opportunity to do a valuation for me. Both of them came around the same price, and then the one I chose was the one I got along with the best. I felt she had the most knowledge, and I like the way she works. So I gave her a sole mandate, and she sold my grandmother's property within a month.
There's lots to unpack there, and I think lots of golden nuggets. And it's quite surprising for me. There's lots of golden nuggets in there for someone that's a seller, but I think there's lots of golden nuggets in there for an aspiring or a young estate agent as well. How to go about your business. If you're going to take 2 or 3 days to reply to an email, sorry, but you're out. But where I would like to start, what's most interesting for me is we started the conversation with a buyer's or a seller's market. And you said that seller's market, you want to sell your property and you've got lots of buyers to choose from. And in this scenario here, you basically created your own seller's market. You started with, okay, who's the agency with the most listings here? Who's the most visible? Who's got the most? Then in the agency, who's the agent with the most listings in that price range, etc., etc. Breaking it down.
Because there's an idea out in the market that I would like to talk about now, because people think if you have one agent working on one property all the time, he's going to have a higher chance of success in selling the property. Then you've got one agent working on a lot of properties. So that's wrong. The more exposure you have in a certain market sector, the higher your chances of success in that market sector. So if you've got an agent that's got 50 listings, he's got more exposure. He's got more clients calling him because he's got more to offer to the market than an agent with 5 listings. And he says, yeah, I'm focusing on these 5 listings. I wouldn't say more the merrier, but you want to focus on exposure.
And that's once again the 80-20 principle, basically. The Pareto, I think it's the Pareto principle, we'll put it in the show notes, is the agent that's doing better gets more of the listings, gets more of the money, and it just compounds and compounds and compounds, and you want to get into that. So I think there's a lesson there for a seller, firstly, to basically create your own buy or seller's market, create value for your property through the agent that you choose. And you can actually add value to your property or make your property more valuable or look more valuable to the outside if you make a right choice there. The other thing is what I just want to touch on is You said that you gave that lady a sole mandate. What's your thoughts? Why a sole mandate? You had two people. Why not a dual mandate? What's your thoughts on mandates regarding that?
Okay, so you must ask yourself, in the end, what sells a property? And that is an active agent with the incentive to do the job. So when you give an agent a sole mandate, you are actually creating an environment for him for a certain time period. If that property sells, he's going to earn from the deal. So now he's got a higher chance for return on investment. And as any business work, you want to use 10 Rand, work with it, get that 10 Rand back with a bit of profit. So now, like I say, you've created an environment for him to earn. So now he's got a better incentive to spend time and to spend money on marketing. And the more money and time he spends, the more exposure you as a seller will get, and the better quality marketing material you're going to have on the internet. Because in the end, all the properties in your area, in your price range, are competition for you. So if you put in the filter on, let's say, property 24, and there's 10 properties that comes up that suit falls in that filters, you want to stand out. And if you've got 5 agents spending as little as money as they can just to get the advertisement out, you're going to blend in with the rest. But if you've got a good agent spending money and time on the marketing, you're going to stand out on the internet, and you are going to compete for the inquiry, and you're going to win. And that's what sells the property in the end, and that's what gets you the buyers to come and have a look at the house.
From
and that's what the sole mandate gives the agent.
Yes, and I have to say, in my experience, I assisted with the transfer of a property of a friend, and their property was in the market for quite a long time. They've already moved to the other property. Property stood empty. Later, there were like 15 or 20 advertisements across the property, and they couldn't get the property sold. They wanted a certain price, and they just couldn't get it. And at a certain stage, they decided, okay, listen, we're going to give a sole mandate to this agency, and only one bought up, and a week or two later, boom, it sold.
They gave somebody responsibility. So that's a very important thing of a mandate as well, because it takes time to sell a property. It's not a quick sell, because it's not an expensive item. It's an expensive item. When you are in the market for a couple of months, and you've got a lot of agents and agencies working on your property, there's not an agent that is in, I won't say control, but has got all the information regarding the selling of the property, because you've got a lot of agents bringing in buyers, and then they leave, and then you don't know, sometimes you don't get feedback, so you don't know why is that seller not buying my property. But when you have one agent who controls, who is the contact person between you and the market, so all the information and all the activity runs through this guy. A couple of months later, when the property hasn't sold yet, you've got data to analyze, because everything came through him and say, sir, here's the problem why your property is not selling. Is it pricing? Is it the way it's being marketed? What's the issue? But if you've got a lot of people giving the seller information, or sometimes not even giving them feedback, he's not going to know what the problem is. How can I solve my problem? How can I get my property sold? And so that's very important to, especially if it takes some time to sell the property. You need somebody who's in control of all the data to analyze and to find the problem.
We talk about processes and data and analyzation, and then we go on Instagram and we see property sold in 12 hours, property sold in 36 hours. And how do you bring those two together? What's the actual reality, and how do you manage people's expectations? Because that's obviously not, that's the glamorous, the once in a blue moon type of things.
Yeah, so I've sold properties in a couple of hours. So let's make an example. Like I said, when I chose my selling agent, is as in England Volker, we want property specialists in a certain aspect of the property industry. So you're a commercial agent. You do rentals. You do residential sales. You do farms and plots. I focus on residential sales. So that's where I work most of the time. And we're also assigned areas. So if you work in that area, usually the properties in that area attract certain buyers, a client base, and then it's easy to do the matching. So let's make an example. Again, I've got 10 properties selling for R1 million. I get a buyer. He says, I'm willing to spend R1 million. This is what I'm looking for. And then 2 of the properties could maybe work for him. I show him the property and he says, yeah, but this one is maybe a bit bigger than I wanted, or this one is not my style. But then he stays on my I call it my buyers list. And then tomorrow I meet a new seller who wants to sell. I have a look at the property and say, this is perfect for this buyer. After the conversation, we've got the pricing, everything done. I call this guy and say, come and have a look. I've got your buyer. I've got your house. And then for the seller, I tell him, I've got your buyer. And then sometimes it just works perfectly and you get a property sold without listing it.
Yes, that's incredible. Yeah. Just bringing us back to a seller and what they go through and how they need to make their choices regarding these. What are common mistakes or common errors that you see that sellers make, or maybe it's misconceptions, or maybe just what they go through and what you have to assist them with, and what they can maybe, try not to make these mistakes when you sell your property?
Yeah, I would say hiring too many agents that is not experts or working in that specific property market where you want to sell the property. So you need somebody that takes responsibility. That's very important, and somebody who's willing to spend money and time on it. So that's a common mistake. People think, if I hire 10 agents, I'm going to get more exposure. Now I've got 10 people not really taking responsibility for the sale of the property. That's not a successful way to go about it. Yeah. So that really is a common mistake. And I think pricing is also very important. Anything that's cheaper will sell quicker. Everybody knows that. But you want to get the best value for your property in the current market condition. So getting an agent who's knowledgeable, who's got good knowledge of the market and your area to assist you with pricing is very important. Because the longer the property is on the market, the lower the offers are going to become.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you said earlier regarding the unglamorous part of being an agent is all the administration, the paperwork and things. And something that I see as a transfer attorney where errors come in is with the new mandatory disclosure form Annexure B that has now, it's become part of your job as an estate agent, basically. And that the seller must fill in a form that basically says, listen, this is the current state of the property. This is what's wrong with it. The roof leaks, and this wall is cracked, or the plumbing doesn't work here, or this tap is, whatever the case might be. And I've seen different things regarding that. I've seen empty forms. I've seen contracts badly filled in. What's your experience regarding, let's call it errors or mistakes? Or obviously, we all know, I mean, me being an attorney, people hate paperwork. They hate to fill it in. And I can only assume when you come to a seller and you say, listen, here's 10 pages or 12 pages of a contract. We have to go through it and fill it in.
Get it done, yeah.
I would assume they don't really want to go through it. And obviously a seller, I think there's two things. I mean, I've been living in my house for a long time. So there might be small things wrong with it that I've completely forgot about. firstly. So it's not really bothering me anymore. But if someone else moves into it, they'll immediately pick it up. Or on the other hand, a seller might think, it's winter now, it's not raining, so I'm going to see if I can get away with this roof leak. Nobody's going to pick it up. Yeah. Have you encountered things like that? Have you encountered problems?
Yeah, people have different aspects on property that are important to them. So maybe you're not a big gardener, and then the buyer comes and he's very into gardening. Then there's a level difference here, and then sometimes when the property is given over, he feels, but this garden is not in the same level that it was when I came to see it. But for you, it's the same because you're not really into gardening. So that's sometimes a problem we get. But and a common mistake, I must say, is when you start marketing a property, usually it takes about 4 to 5 months from putting it on the market until the registration is done. A lot of stuff can happen in 5 months. There wasn't a, let's call it a roof leak. Potchefstroom is well known for some good storms we get, a lot of hail that falls around here, and then now there's a roof leak. So I would suggest when an agent puts a property in the market, he does that form. It's mandatory now to do it then, but just have a look when the deal is done. Redo it or update it, because 5 months is a long time, and you can get a new problem after 5 months. Yeah,
and I think part of that, what I see often, is when you've got busy with the transfer, and then occupation of the property happens before registration. So seller moves out, whatever the case might be. Buyer moves in, but registration is only in 2 months. And those 2 months are usually a big issue. We actually had a transaction like that, me and you, at a certain point. And then those people, you're moving in, and then suddenly you realize everything. This crack in this wall, or this big piece of paint here and there. Yeah. So I think, once again, getting back to our conversation regarding house fever and all those things, I think it's so important, firstly, for a seller to disclose as much as they can. I mean, rather be upfront, be honest, and otherwise you're going to have lots of issues later on. And for a buyer as well, just for a moment, forget about the house fever. Actually look at the property, behind the makeup, what's going on, move the couch, move the bed, and have a look at the property. And that's very, very important.
Yeah, so I always ask myself on that, and we did this, we bring the parties together and we ask what's fair both ways. And there's always if there's a problem, there's always a solution to it. And then to find a solution between the parties that it's a win-win to both sides. Because in the end, this guy wants to buy a property, he wants a house, and this guy wants to sell. So if the deal falls through, everybody loses. And to find a fair solution to the problem that's on hand, that's very important. And then that's when you need good guidance of an agent, good guidance of an attorney to get the parties so they both feel okay, everybody's coming to the table to get the deal done, and then to finish it, to get it through.
And that's awesome, because that at the end of the day, we are all in the same team. We're trying to get this deal done. We're trying to win. Win is registration in the deeds office, very technical term, but at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat. We're rowing in the same direction. So let's rather work together than work against each other. And I think that's where it's so important to have a savvy estate agent and a savvy attorney that's been through this. And let's rather work together than
working
against each other. And finding a solution beforehand is always, maybe not always, but better and cheaper than trying to fight about it afterwards. And if we're upfront and honest, I've got a deal like this that I'm busy with now, there's a few things wrong with the property, but the buyers said, listen, we're in any event going to build and break and everything afterwards, so we don't have a problem with it. But if you're not honest upfront, then afterwards you can get into trouble.
And going to court and fighting about this is much more expensive than just sorting out the problem.
Yeah.
So I would always advise people, say, let's make a plan now, let's make a deal now. It's going to be better for everybody, and it's going to be cheaper as well.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. I don't want to take work away from the litigation attorneys, but it's just so much better to just sort it out.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can sort it out with a handshake.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, I just want to maybe mention that is whatever you decide in conversation, get the parties together. Is okay. Let's agree. Let's put it on paper, because I've also had instances where maybe the agent and the buyer walks through the property, and the agent says no, but the seller said they'll sort this out and sort that out, and then nothing's on paper. Registration happens, nothing is sorted out, and then you have this massive gray area, and then to fight about it.
Talk is cheap.
Talk is cheap. Looking at sellers, obviously a big part of selling your property is deciding on a price. And obviously you've been living in this property, you love this property, you had your children and everything, so this property is worth a lot to you. Emotionally involved. Is there something, or where is the boundary of being priced right, overpriced? What do you see regarding that?
Yeah, there's overpricing is a big problem of our industry because of the emotional attachment that clients have to their house. It's your castle. But let me ask you like this. So a new Hilux Bakkie now will cost around R1 million, or just below. If I buy a new Hilux Bakkie and I add a roll bar, I add a nudge bar, and maybe some nice taillights, will you then buy that Bakkie from me for 1.5 million? Or will you pass?
I will pass.
You'll buy your own new Bakkie.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to say by that is your Hilux Bakkie is your area. Or your address. You can change anything to your property except the location. So what people must keep in mind is your address gives you boundaries. It gives you a ceiling and gives you a floor. And your property will be priced within that area. And if you keep on spending and spending and spending, it's for yourself, it's for your family, just remember there comes a time when the investment part is over, and now you're just doing it for yourself. You're not going to see any more growth because your area doesn't allow it. So when you overprice a property, it's going to take longer to sell. It probably won't sell because people would rather buy that for that amount in a different area, where properties are generally more priced the same as that one you're trying to sell. So I sometimes get to a seller, and then he looks at his what he's got, and he says, "Yes, Juan, you see, I've added this, and I did this addition, and I painted it, and I extended the property, and that's why I feel I must get this amount." And then I do evaluation for them, and then they get angry with me because I'm using properties in that area that's not on the same quality, or doesn't offer as much as their property do. But I do keep all that additions in mind when I do the valuation, but they miss the one thing. The biggest relation they've got with the other properties that I use in the valuation is the address. Because when you start doing evaluation and you're choosing or taking properties from different areas to do evaluation, that means you are going to compete against those areas when the buyer comes along. And that's when you get stuff. So people must keep in mind, overpricing the property, you may be just delaying the price you're going to get later. So rather get a price right from the start, take your money and move on with it.
Yeah, and then obviously if you make the sale, then you can do something with that money. You can invest it, you can start a business, you can put it into your business, you can buy a new property. So delaying and waiting for 50,000 more, 100,000 more is actually you must count the cost. It's costing you.
Yeah, the down value of money is important because let's say your property is worth 1.8 and you want 2 million, and now you've delayed the selling of your property for 2 years because you want 2 million, but you're only getting offers around 1.8, maybe 1.85. If you took the first offer 2 years back for 1.8, you could have gotten up to 2 million with the interest earned if you've invested that amount. So rather, let's call it take a loss now, but go make the money back afterwards.
And you obviously, more often than not, still servicing your loan, still doing maintenance and things like that.
It's costing you, you're losing the time value of the money, and having the money, then you've got options. You've got options to make that 1.82 million somewhere else. Or if it's your primary residence, you're now selling it for 1.8 and moving it to a different area where you're going to earn more interest because that area is a faster growing area. That means you're now moving 1.8 to an area where that 1.8 is going to become 2 million much quicker than leaving it in that area.
Yeah. Okay, Juan, I'm going to skip across a few things now, which we can get back to. But I think while we're on this, let's delve into property as investment. I mean, we're already talking about that now. We're already talking about the area where you are, where your property is. And we chatted about that beforehand as well. I mean, my wife and I, we've bought now, I think about 16 years ago in a specific area. And the price at which we bought, you can't buy that house in a different area. It's going to cost you 3 times more, 4 times more for arguably the same property. And you have a great saying, or how you think about the area in which a property is. So if you can, maybe last week, Jonathan and I would discuss property as investment and his principles regarding that. How do you see property as investment? If you have to think about it, if you have to look at a property and determine, is this property an investment or not? What process do you go through? Do you have certain principles? How do you think about it?
Yeah, so when I buy an investment property for myself, there's 4 things I look at. There's 4 ways this property can work financially for me. So the first one is, can it be rented? If you buy a property and you can rent it out, it's not an investment. You're going to make a loss on it. You're going to lose money. So if I buy this property, can I rent it out? And is there a good ratio, percentage-wise, on what the property costs and how much rental you can collect each month? And I usually calculate that over a year period. What's the percentage return on investment that I'm going to receive out of the rental income? So that's the first thing. The second one is capital growth.
I just want to stop there and ask you, do you have a specific percentage, a sweet spot that you look for?
Yeah. So in Potchefstroom, if you can get a property that's going to have a return on investment around 10%, you're doing well. You can, if you've got the cash and you put it into the bank, you can get a higher percentage than 10%. But not everybody's got that amount of cash piled up somewhere to make a cash investment in property. So you use bank financing on it. So then when you work with leverage, I'll get to that now, the cash on cash, you can do better using a property which is leveraged than putting the cash amount into the bank, or rather into the property. Leverage is a very important factor, but I'll get to that one later. So yeah, 10% is usually what I'm looking for.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt again, and maybe as we go through these portions, I might interrupt quite a bit. I'm trying to play in the mind of our viewers. I see so often people say, but property is investment. All property is investment. But you just said, if you're not getting rental income on your property, most probably it's not an investment.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts regarding that? Why do you say that?
Yeah, not all properties are a good investment. You need to do your homework. You need some good people in your corner assisting you with the analysis of the vehicle. Let's say, I always feel each area has got a interest rate to it. So everything in property, like people say all the time, it's location. Your location is going to dictate how much of a return you're going to make on your property. So when I tell people choose your location, I mean you take Potchefstroom. Let's say you take 3 areas. The first area you're going to get a return on investment of 5%. The second one 8%, and the last one 10%. So if a bank asks you, here's 100,000 rand, where do you want to put it? You're going to ask where's the best interest rate. Same with property. And now your interest rate is dictated by area and what sort of property you buy in that area. So if you can make a bad investment, people have lost a lot of money on property. So doing the analysis well and taking time before you make the purchase and looking at a lot of properties, later on it becomes easier and you can get a good purchase.
I think that's a really great point, and Jonathan and I discussed it last week as well. And the next point that you wanted to go on with, and please do, is then the capital portion of property. We looked at the rental portion now. How does the capital portion influence that?
Yeah, so I just touched on it now. Your capital gains is what do you call it? Your location creates the capital gains you're going to see in your property. It's reliant on the location. So if you buy a property for R1 million, you want it to be worth more in the future. And if it's a good investment, it doesn't just grow with inflation, but it beats inflation. So that's an important one. Your capital gain, if you buy a good area, you're going to see capital gains. And the third point which I look at is rental income growth. So they go hand in hand. If you buy a property and there's capital gains on it, there's usually rental growth as well, and that's dictated by the area, by the address. So first I had, can it be rented out? Second is the capital gains, and thirdly is the rental increase over time, because that's your leverage against inflation.
I love that principle, because that's definitely something you don't hear often. And we spoke a bit about it last week. And one of the things with investment property that Jonathan also mentioned was that not everyone's a landlord. And I think that comes in with this point number 3 as well, because what happens usually is the lessee or the person that rents the property says, listen, rent must go up, and then I didn't get an increase, or whatever, that times are tough, and then you don't increase your rent because you're a good landlord, but you're actually maybe then a bad steward of your finances, because this is an investment. And if you're not getting that growth in your rental income, that's actually hampering you.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And why most people struggle with that is, let's say you're renting out the property for 10,000 Rand. Now you want a 5% increase. That's 500 Rand. So over a year, it's 6,000 Rand. But now your tenant says, oh, I was just scraping by with 10,000 Rand. Now you want 10.5. I'm out. Losing 1 month of full rent is you're losing more, 4,000 Rand more than the 6,000 you were aiming to gain over the next year. So that's why owners struggle with that. But in the end, you as a property owner, if you play the long game, you want your rent to increase, like the inflation rate increases as well. So you want to beat inflation. And you're not going to beat inflation if you don't increase your rent. That's I mean, and that's the psychological part of it.
Yeah, and that's the truth. I mean, if you want to make the argument strong on the argument that all property is investment, or your property is investment, you have to look at these principles, and you have to beat inflation. You can't just then linger and not increase your rent and things like that. Otherwise, you must have an honest and hard look at your property portfolio, how big ever it might be. You said you wanted to touch then on leverage.
Yeah, so that's the fourth point when I do my analysis. And that's the big one. You can either, if you do get leverage right, you're going to make a home run, or you're going to crash and burn, if you get it wrong. So that's really when you need a good professional in your corner, because everybody in the property industry, their risk tolerance is way out. All the risk meter is broken, because everybody thinks, no, buy property, it's low risk and it's always an investment and yada yada. You hear that all the time. But when you over leverage, you increase your risk. And when you get let's first start, what is leverage? So leverage is using a financing company, usually a bank, to buy an investment. So the property is worth $1 million, and you take the $1 million from the bank, and now you only spend, let's say, transfer costs on it. So let's say the property, if you buy from the developer, maybe cost you 16,000 Rand just to get the R1 million from the bank. So on cash, you only spend 16,000 Rand, but now you're putting an asset worth $1 million on your portfolio. But like we saw what happened now, the interest rate went up. Can you still, with your tenant, finance the payments? Yeah. Can you cover your monthly bills? And that's when property starts losing money and people go bust because they can't cover the costs, the monthly cost. So you can increase your portfolio quite quickly using leverage, but you increase your risk each time you bring leverage to the equation, and if your risk becomes too high, you're on the brink of failure, and then it didn't work for you. So I would suggest always have some cash in the game, have some skin in the game, and if you leverage quite low risk, if you lower your risk and you use the leverage of the bank, your cash on cash return can be quite good, quite better than another vehicle, maybe putting money in the bank and just getting the interest on the money.
Yeah, and I think that is the average person thinking about property as investment. I think that's their dream, using the bank's money to build their property portfolio. Yeah. But the reality is still it's a bond. It's going to take 20 years or 30 years. And stuff can happen. We've seen it with COVID. We're seeing it now with the interest rate hikes. I mean, on a 2 million property, and now most probably paying about 6,000 Rand more on your bond than 2 years ago. So if you've got 2 or 3 properties, 6,000 times 3 is 18. Do you have enough fat in your budget available to finance that 18,000? And then things start going wrong. Yeah.
And then the question is this an asset? Because you're losing money on it.
And that is the whole point. Yeah. And I think people miss it. Yeah. So, and that's maybe a great point that you're making now is property, let's take a specific property could have been an asset 6 months ago. But now it's a liability 6 months later. Yeah. It's not an asset anymore. Yeah. And now you have to make a choice.
Yeah, I saw that with my properties. My cash flow was much better 2 years back than it is now. Yeah. But at least I anticipated it. And I always sometimes make the sum, let's say I've got a property, I'm paying in 1,000 Rand a month, so it's 12,000 Rand it's costing me over a year. But my capital gains on it was 100,000 Rand. Is it then still worth it? For me, yes, because I'm able to cover the payments and I've got equity in the property and I can start moving that around, maybe to acquire another one.
And that's so interesting. And I think an important part of the whole property process, especially the property buying process, is people, I think they get news from the bank, they approach the bank and the bank says, listen, okay, you'll qualify for 2 million. So what do? They go and search for a property of 2 million, not counting the transfer costs, the bond costs and things like that. And then if there's any interest rate hike, then they are in trouble because there's no fat built in. That's
why we're seeing the distressed sales coming back because a 30% increase in the interest rate is a 30% hike on your monthly payment. And I don't think the salaries went up by 30% in the last 2 years.
It did not. And it's just a big flywheel, and it just makes sense more and more as we speak, and that's what happens. You get a pre-qualification from a bank for 2 million. So what does your wife goes on Property 24, okay, 2 million rand property. And then, you get excited about this 2 million rand property that you're going to buy. You don't want a property then for 1.7 or 1.8.
Because you can get this quality.
Because you want
I want that glamour.
Yeah. And then the moment there's any financial hiccup, then you are in trouble.
Yeah. The thing is, if you search for a property for 2 million, that property actually costs you 2.1 or 2.15 just to get the thing registered on your name. And it's a very important system that's in place to cover you or to keep that property, so that property stays yours, to get it registered in the deeds office.
Yes. No, I agree with you in totality. This episode is sponsored by Mortgage Max Northwest. Now, Marlusia and her team is just incredible. When it comes to bonds, when you're buying a property and needing to obtain a home loan, they are the place to go. It's so important. Even if you're only thinking of buying a property, get that pre-qualification done. Know what you need, know how your finances must look, should look, and to be more approachable for the bank. And even then, you would know what things need to be put in place. So if you're looking to buy a property, if you're looking to get a home loan, make sure that you have a chat with them, have a chat with Marlusia, and see if they can assist you to get your bond. So it's very interesting, Juan, as we've spoken, and I think lots of times we just think about an estate agent, someone just buying or selling property or facilitating that process, seeing a property, listing it, and going on. But I think what I've realized in our conversations more and more that, and what I see at my firm as well, what I love is it's all about finances. Property is that's the thing that we're selling, but at the bottom or underneath it all, it's finances moving, and you have to make financial decisions. And I think, and luckily I can see that you realize it, but I think people must realize that, and agents maybe as well, that you're playing a larger advisory role than you might think. Is that the reality?
Yeah, like I said earlier, as an agent, I'm helping people and advising people to make a purchase. In some cases, it's the most expensive thing they will ever buy. So it is a big purchase. And what I see working with clients sometimes, they struggle with the decision on the investment side or on the lifestyle side of it. And when I work with clients, I try to evaluate what side of the coin they are. Because let's make an example. You've got somebody who wants to buy a property for 2 million, but this is all the facilities he wants in the property. He wants a nice lapa, he wants a swimming pool, he wants 4 bedrooms with an office. And then he's looking at different areas. Now the question I see clients struggle with is, am I going to buy a less growing area in Potch that's got all the facilities I want, or am I going to buy a better address with not all the facilities that I require in the property? And when people lean to one side, I always try to advise them, remember, think of this as well. So if it's a lifestyle buyer, I try to explain to him, yes, it's important to think of your family and how you function and what you need in your property, but remember, it's still a 2 million rand decision. So remember this part of the coin as well. And that's the advice I always try to give to people.
Yeah, and that's also how you can get yourself into deep trouble, is if you want to buy a lifestyle that you can't actually afford. And then once again, getting into the house fever equation. And Jonathan talked about emotional buys last week as well, especially with your primary residence and your hazy BDC. It's usually lots of emotions involved, and you may be trying to buy a larger lifestyle that you can actually afford, and then you've got problems. And I want to take us now to just a few other things, and I got a few questions on TikTok regarding this conversation that we can address. But before we get there, another thing that people have to choose, especially a seller, is there's obviously an attorney involved, and a transfer attorney that's going to deal with, well, there's usually two other attorneys as well, a bond cancellation attorney, a bond registration attorney, but the one in the middle of it all is a transfer attorney. That's what I do for a living. The seller has the prerogative or the power or the privilege to choose this attorney. What do you see with that? Do people make mistakes? They choose a buddy in a town somewhere, or someone that's an attorney but they don't really do transfers. What are the hiccups or the ifs and buts that people can look out for?
Yeah, so my advice on attorneys usually is find somebody who's a specialist in transfer. Yeah, find somebody who's a specialist in transfer, a transfer attorney. Because what I've experienced, when they use maybe a family member who's got to give them some discount, but he's actually in another sector in the lawyer industry, your folder keeps on it never goes to the top. It's always at the bottom. There's always something more important where his bread and butter of running his business lies, and then you sometimes struggle to become the priority for the day, and then it takes longer, and clients do get frustrated after a while, and then it's tough if there's a family bond to call the guy out and say, yes, man, it's been 5 months now, we are not getting done with this. What's the problem? So that's the first thing I would always tell people: let's get a transfer attorney, one who specializes in that sector of law, to do the job for us. And then another important thing is you can use attorneys. A transfer attorney can sit anywhere, but he needs to get the clearance certificates done, and that's sometimes difficult if you don't have a good contact within the municipality, because it's a struggle these days. Our municipality is not known for being how can I say, good with their admin. So that can become a problem if he doesn't get the clearance certificates from the municipality, and then it takes longer to do the transfer. So I like personally to get it locally, to use a local guy. But if he's got a contact to get the certificates out of the municipality, then we can maybe use them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I can definitely attest to that. I do transfers all over South Africa. And the municipalities, luckily, lots of them are online now, so you can sort it out. And I mean, I'll be the first one that I'll always say, listen, if you sell your property and you've got a buddy that's an attorney or a family member that's an attorney, please, I mean, give the transfer to them. Don't, but obviously, they must be a transfer attorney. They must have experience in it, because if it's going to linger, if it's going to take, usually a transfer, as you would know, takes about 3 months to get through if everything goes well. But if a person is not in that game, there's mistakes, things slows the process. We get to 6 months, you're still paying the bond. Then it gets a touchy situation, and you don't then want it to be your friend. It gets difficult. So yes, I think the choice in transfer attorney is an important one as well. One of the questions that I got on TikTok from Leroy 0011 is, he said, and I get with the videos I make, lots of time people just say, listen, I wish someone told me. Why didn't anyone told us? Why am I only learning about this now? And he specifically said, I wish these things were explained by the agents when you buy a property.
Yeah. So when I advise people on choosing an agent, I tell them, look for an agent with the heart of a teacher. You don't want an agent just answering the questions you have, because sometimes you don't know what questions to ask. You want him to give you advice so that you are empowered to make a better decision. And buying a property is a big decision. It's a 2 million, 3 million, 1 million rand decision. And you want all the information you can, get it out of the agent to make a better decision. So find someone with the heart of a teacher who wants to sit with you and explain, this is the process, this is what you need to look at, here's the pros, here's the cons, maybe assist you to find out if you are even ready to buy a property. Like I said, don't try to time the market, time yourself. You're in control of yourself. Look inwards and say, okay, I am ready, and sit with the agent, discuss the process, and let him take the lead and advise you on making a good decision.
I want to flip that coin, and there's actually a massive responsibility then on an agent.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, with the current lending rate, if you buy a 2 million rand property now with a bond for 30 years, you're going to pay more than 7 million back to the bank if you pay for 30 years. So you are trusting this person. I'm trusting you to guide me to make a 7 million rand's worth of decision, investment. Better to think about it properly, to choose your agent wisely, and make sure that it's not only house fever, or it's just not just an emotional decision.
You want an agent that will look after your family, to find a property that's suitable for your family. But there's also a business side to it, because it's big numbers. So if you get an agent with good integrity, that's got a bit of a business acumen, the chances are you're going to hit a score on both sides of the coin.
Have you had the situation where you told the buyer, says, listen, you can't afford this? They want to buy a property, and you just listen. You might think you've got the money, but you shouldn't do this.
So I've had both sides. I've had people tell them, if you want to buy that property, I'm not selling it to you. Go call another agent, because I didn't think it's a good property to buy, and then you don't want to sit with the problems afterwards. And then I had a discussion with the client once. He explained to me his financial position, and I did an analysis, and I told him, if I was in your shoes, this is what I would look at. He didn't like the advice I was giving, so he bought a property from another agent worth much more than I would have suggested him to look at. So I haven't spoken to the guy since. I hope it's still going well with the interest rate where it is now. But that sometimes happens. If people ask me, Juan, what do you think? I would put myself in their shoes and give them advice of what I would have done if I was in their decision. If I was in their position.
No, I think, that's amazing. And I think agents have to realize that there's actually this big responsibility on their shoulders. And that touches on what I think, and I would like you to speak to, is there might be a rookie agent or a young agent or someone wanting to get into the whole estate agent thing, watching this video, and he's sitting there looking at your numbers, looking at your journey, looking at what you've achieved up to now. But what advice can you give a rookie agent? How should they start? How should they think about this?
So again, my biggest advice would be start as early as possible. If I had a do-over, I would have liked to get into this industry straight out of school. I would have had 10 years experience by now. And with a rookie agent, find an agency that doesn't just see, okay, you have a phone, you have a car, good, let's go. I'll go sell some properties. You want a support structure. And you want to maybe shadow a more experienced agent until you are comfortable. And you want an agency that's got a good, like I said, support structure. So when there's a question or something you struggle with, you need someone who you can call and ask for advice. And that's what I got from my agency. The people in the industry advised me against their brand to join Engel & Volker because of the support structure that we get through this brand. And that makes a new agent more comfortable. Yeah. And it also helps him to grow faster, to get to a better place in his industry. Yeah.
Something we talked about a little earlier when we had a coffee is social media and how social media has changed the game. You've been in the game now for a while, probably before social media was a big thing, and now suddenly we're talking about TikTok videos and selling a lifestyle on TikTok and things. How's social media impacted your life as an estate agent and what you do? Yeah.
So my take on social media is, if people are looking for a property, they will go and look on a property website. If they want to get to know an agent, they go on social media. So social media has given us a platform to tell the market, hello, I'm an estate agent, and this is how I do my work. This is how I treat my clients, and this is what I have accomplished in my area with my clients, for my clients. So you can use social media to decide on what sort of agent you want assisting you with one of your biggest purchases or selling one of your biggest assets. And social media has given the market that platform to get to know the agent behind the property picture in front of a property, the picture of the agent on the property website. Who is the guy? How does he conduct his business? And is that the sort of guy I want for my transfer, for my purchase?
And that's actually awesome. So it's kind of a trustworthy. It gains and gives trust. Can you trust this person? Yeah. That's a great way to think about it. John, to wrap it up, I want to be respectful of your time. We've been going for quite a while. What's your dream? You've spoken about property now, buying, selling, working with people, investing. What do you want to accomplish? What's your next big step? What do you want to? Is it we joked earlier is to sell Buckingham Palace, or what's on your bucket list as an estate agent?
Yeah, selling Buckingham Palace will be a good one, eh? A big deal. So agents have different goals in the industry. Some of them want to sell the big mansion or only work in the exclusive market. For me, I really look up to my director, Karel Venter, and how he conducts his business with a developer having I cannot say a problem, but wanting to put an estate or a complex with millions of rands into the market, and how he sits with them and he to mitigate the risks that they are in the property industry, assisting this guy from breaking ground until selling the last property. I must say that I feel that will be my goal, is to get into that side of it and assist people in developing an estate or developing a complex and selling off a lot of units and assisting a lot of people with accommodation rather than selling the big mansion. That's amazing. That's speaking to building something and building something up and being part of a process. Because I get more of a kick in designing an environment. So when you design an estate, you're designing a lifestyle environment. You're not just designing one house. So, and I like that part of it, because in the end, it's the lifestyle that you sell, not the property as the product. And that builds in what we discussed in the break time over a coffee as well, what you said, that the guy that makes the most money is the guy that owns the property first. And I mean, that speaks to the development side of property. Yes. So it's the inversion of a car. The guy who buys the car first takes the biggest hit. So with property, as soon as the property is finished, it's going to accumulate value through its entirety until it's demolished. So the guy who owns it first has got the largest chance of keeping it the longest and seeing the most gains on it.
Great. I think that is a perfect place to wrap it up. John, just quickly where people can find you. I would assume it's on Facebook, EV Juan Badenhorst, and Instagram, Juan Badenhorst _EV, but we'll share everything in the show notes. Yeah. Is there any last thoughts or ideas you want to leave with the viewers?
Yeah. There's any people out there who wants to become an agent, I do get a lot of joy out of my work. I get a lot of joy sitting with people and discussing their plans. If it's an investor, or if it's somebody who wants to buy their own house, their primary residence, I enjoy both sides of it. So I do get satisfaction of working in the industry. So yeah, and if you think this is a industry you want to try, give it a go.
That's awesome. It was great to have you part of the show. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it, and all the best for your future endeavors. These sponsors make our podcast possible. So if you like us, like them, please go and support them. Show your support, like, follow, subscribe on their social media channels. All are linked here in below. Visit their website and you are more than welcome to contact them if you need their assistance.